was a blur of dead leaves and tangled roots. Each lungful of air burned, a sharp, icy sting against the raw panic clawing at his throat. His heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs, a desperate drumbeat in the suffocating silence of the woods. Behind him, through the dense, skeletal trees, a strange light flickered not, the steady beam of a flashlight, but something else. Something unnatural. It pulsed with a sickly, intermittent rhythm, sometimes blue, sometimes a pale, washed-out violet, gaining on him with an impossible speed. He didn't dare look back. He just knew he couldn't let it touch him. He was running, not just from a place, but from a terrifying, creeping wrongness that threatened to swallow him whole. He was escaping. Or at least, he was trying to, but the path kept twisting, turning back on itself, the trees growing thicker, their branches like grasping fingers. The air grew heavy, thick, with the smell of damp earth and something else, something faintly sweet, like ozone after a lightning strike. It was a place that felt ancient and utterly alien, a place that shouldn't be here. And as he stumbled, catching his breath against the rough bark of an oak, a thought, cold and sharp as a shard of glass, pierced through his fear. It wasn't a thought that came from him, but one that seemed to settle upon him from the oppressive atmosphere itself, a question meant not just for him, but for anyone who might be listening. If you got lost in a place that doesn't exist, could you ever return to reality? Before the forest and the frantic escape, there was just Liam. At 32, he had cultivated a life of deliberate solitude. He wasn't lonely. He was self-reliant. His small apartment was a testament to his passions. Maps of remote mountain ranges, climbing gear meticulously cleaned and stored, and shelves filled with books on survivalism and solo exploration. He worked a quiet job as a data analyst, but his real life began when he clocked out. He craved the silence of the wild, the feeling of being a single, anonymous soul against the vast backdrop of nature. His friends called him a ghost, a man who would disappear for weeks at a time, only to resurface with a new scar and a quiet, satisfied smile. He loved the challenge, the purity of being off the where the only signals that mattered were the sun, the stars, and the compass in his hand. His next destination was a whisper he'd overheard from an old hiker in a backcountry forum, the Ashwood National Forest, a sprawling, largely unpatrolled territory known for its disorienting terrain and utter lack of cellular service. It was perfect. He packed his bag with practiced efficiency a week's worth of rations, a water filter, a first aid kit, and his trusted analog map. He told no one exactly where he was going. That was part of the ritual. The thrill was in being completely untethered from the world he knew. 3 days into his trek, deep within the forest's emerald heart, he saw it. It wasn't a trail marked by the Park Service. It was a narrow, winding path, almost invisible, as if etched into the landscape by footsteps, long faded. It wasn't on his map. His compass spun erratically when he neared its entrance. Every instinct, every piece of training he had, screamed at him to turn back, but the adventurer in him, the part that craved the unknown, was louder. He took a deep breath, the air suddenly still and cold, and stepped onto the path. The path didn't wind through the forest as he expected. Instead, it seemed to cut through it, the dense trees giving way with an unnerving abruptness. After what felt like an hour of walking, he emerged from the tree line and stopped dead. Before him, nestled in a small, fog-shrouded valley, was a town. It was a place ripped from a forgotten photograph, with cobblestone streets, gas-style street lamps that weren't lit, and storefronts with faded, hand-painted signs. Miller's General Goods, the Oaken Anvil Inn. There were no cars, no power lines, no sign of modern life. An oppressive silence hung over the entire town, broken only by the sound of his own breathing. The air was still, not a single leaf stirring on the trees that lined the main street. It was as if the entire town was holding its breath. He walked cautiously down the street, his boots echoing with an unnatural loudness. He saw people, a woman sweeping a porch with slow, languid strokes, a man staring blankly into a shop window, a group of children standing motionless in a circle in a small park. Their clothes were old-fashioned, simple and worn, but it was their eyes that chilled him to the bone. They were vacant, devoid of any emotion or recognition. As he passed, they would turn their heads in perfect, silent unison to watch him, their gazes following him with a detached, unnerving curiosity. He felt like an actor who had stumbled onto the wrong stage. He walked toward a man leaning against a post office wall and cleared his throat. "Excuse me," Liam started, his voice sounding rough. Before he could ask for directions, the man spoke, his voice a dry, toneless rasp. "Welcome, Liam." Liam froze. His blood ran cold. He had never seen this man before in his life. He wasn't wearing anything with his name on it. He hadn't spoken to a soul, but they knew him. A knot of pure dread tightened in his stomach. He had to leave. He turned, offering a panicked, tight-lipped nod to the man, and walked quickly at first, then breaking into a jog back the way he came. He found the path and plunged back into the woods, not stopping until the town was completely out of sight. He ran for what felt like miles, his only guide, the sinking sun. But as the forest began to thin, a sickening sense of déjà vu washed over him. He emerged from the trees and found himself standing at the edge of the same cobblestone street, facing the same silent town. He tried again, taking a different direction, pushing through thick underbrush until he was scratched and bleeding, only to find himself, impossibly, back at the town's entrance. And defeated and exhausted, he checked into the Oak and Anvil Inn, the door creaking open into a dusty, silent lobby. The innkeeper, a woman with the same empty eyes as the others, simply handed him a key without a word. That night, sleep offered no escape. He was thrown into a vivid, terrifying dream. In the dream, he was sitting in a dark room, speaking into a microphone, telling a story. He was telling the story of a man named Liam, an adventurer who found a strange, unmapped town. He was telling his own story, narrating his own nightmare. He woke up in a cold sweat, the dream's narrator's voice, his own voice still echoing in his ears. On the small, rickety nightstand beside his bed, there was a piece of folded, yellowed paper. It hadn't been there when he went to sleep. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. Scrawled in a frantic, spidery script were 5 words. "You are fading from reality." Days bled into a terrifying, monotonous loop. Every attempt to escape led him back to the main street. Every night, he had the same dream of narrating his own demise. And every morning, a new note would appear. "They are waiting for the story to end. Your memories are not your own." The character must be replaced. He was losing his mind, the line between the waking world and his nightmares blurring into a single, cohesive horror. On the 5th day, as he stood by his window, staring down at the unchanging street, he saw something that made his heart stop. A man, carrying a large backpack and looking around with a mix of curiosity and caution, was stepping off the hidden path and entering the town. Liam's breath caught in his throat. The man looked exactly like him. The same build, the same jacket, the same determined look, of an explorer. It was like watching a ghost of his former self, and in that instant, a memory sharp, clear, and utterly horrifying slammed into him. It wasn't his memory, it was something he'd read. A story posted late one night on a niche online forum for paranormal encounters. It was a post about an anonymous hiker who stumbled upon a nameless town that wasn't T on any map. A town where the locals knew his name, and from which he could never leave. He remembered reading it, a chill running down his spine, before dismissing it as a well-written piece of fiction. He had read this exact story. He had been fascinated by it. And now, he wasn't just reading it. He was in it. The realization crashed down on him with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't Liam, the adventurer. He was just the next character. The Liam who had just entered the town was the new protagonist. As this truth settled in, he felt a strange, horrifying shift inside him. His own memories of his apartment, his job, his friends began to feel distant, like scenes from a movie he'd once seen. He tried to shout, to warn the new arrival, but his voice was a weak, airy whisper. He was becoming one of them, a background character, fading, with the last vestiges of his will. He found his phone. There was no signal, of course, but the voice recorder still worked. He held it to his lips, his voice barely a rasp, a hollow echo of what it once was. His final thoughts, his last piece of himself, poured into the small device. He left it on the windowsill, a tiny digital message in a bottle, before the last of his identity unraveled completely. The recording was short, his voice strained and breaking. If you're hearing this, you found my phone. If someone asks about me, about Liam, don't answer. Don't say my name. A long pause, filled with the sound of shallow, ragged breathing. Just run. Then the recording ends. But if you listen closely, in the silence that follows, you can almost hear a faint, distant whisper carried on the wind, a sound that seems to come from the town itself. Whose story is next? So, a final warning to you, the listener, the next person to hear this tale. Be careful of the stories you read late at night, and if you ever find yourself on a trail that isn't on any map, turn back. Don't enter.